You know, it's funny how some companies, they kind of weave themselves into the fabric of our lives. Like, I was just thinking about this, that old Walkman
Mm,
I had as a kid,
right.
bright yellow, impossible to keep untangled.
Yep.
But fast forward to today, and I'm glued to my noise canceling headphones. But it's still Sony, right? Makes you wonder, how does a company stay relevant for decades
Yeah.
across so many different trends? Well,
Mm,
that's what we're here to find out today,
right.
because we're diving deep
Yes.
into Sony's 2024 annual report.
Absolutely.
Now, we know you guys are busy and
Yeah.
nobody's got time to sit here and decipher hundreds of
There.
pages of
Right.
financial statements. So that's where we come in.
Yeah.
Consider this your insider's guide to where Sony stands today.
I love it.
What's got them celebrating? What's keeping them up at night?
Yes.
And maybe most importantly, where are they placing their bets for the future?
Yeah, and this year's report is it's a fascinating read
Okay.
because Sony's making some big moves. It's not just about, the latest PlayStation or those sleek headphones anymore.
Right.
This report kind of gives us a peek behind the curtain
I
at
know.
their strategic investments in things like, image sensors.
Uh-huh.
We're also going to unpack their plans to spin off the Sony Financial Group, which is a pretty big deal.
Right.
Once we'll tackle that, that looming question.
Yeah.
How will those Hollywood strikes impact their entertainment empire?
See, told you this was going to be good. But before we get ahead of ourselves, it's easy to think of Sony as this tech giant
Mm-hmm.
that makes gadgets and movies, but their reach is way more expansive than that.
You're absolutely right. Their business segments are surprisingly diverse. Take their game and network services,
Okay.
or GNNS, as they call it.
GNNS.
Of course, everyone knows about the PlayStation,
Right.
but this segment also includes the PlayStation Store and all those online gaming services, so it's a whole ecosystem.
Right. And then there's music.
Yes.
We're not just talking about, your favorite artists here.
Mm-hmm.
Sony's involved in music publishing.
Yes,
Meaning they actually own the rights to some major songs,
that's right.
which, basically means they get a cut every time one of those songs is played or used.
He does, yeah.
It's a whole other side of the music industry that most people don't even think about.
A lot of people don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But moving on to pictures, this one's a little more straightforward. We're talking movies, TV shows.
Okay.
Think, big name studios like Columbia Pictures and TV networks all over the world.
It's amazing how much content they're actually behind.
It's a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And, of course, we can't forget about ET&S,
Right.
which stands for Entertainment, Technology, and Services.
That's right.
This is where you find those noise-canceling headphones I mentioned earlier,
Yes.
along with their TVs, cameras, smartphones, you name it.
All the gadgets. Yep.
And this might surprise some people, but Sony's also a major player in a field you might not expect:
Okay.
imaging and sensing solutions,
Interesting.
or INSS.
Okay.
This is all about image sensors,
Okay.
those tiny components that are inside our smartphones
Right.
and digital cameras.
Yeah,
That would allow us to capture those amazing photos and videos.
that's right. Yeah.
It's easy to forget that for every cool gadget we use, there's some incredible tech hidden inside, making it all possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, ready for something totally different? Sony's also got a financial services arm.
They do.
It's mainly focused on the Japanese market, offering things like life insurance and asset management services.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's like they've got a finger in every pie imaginable.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that all other category in the report is where they keep the really interesting stuff.
Well, interesting might be a stretch, but
Right.
it's where you'll find things like blank CDs and DVDs, remnants of a bygone era, maybe.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've established that Sony's reach is vast and their business is incredibly diverse.
Absolutely.
But how is this all translating to their bottom line? Let's take a look at the numbers, and trust me, we'll make it painless.
Okay.
So we're talking about a company with fingers in practically every pie imaginable.
That's true.
But how are they actually performing? Give us the juicy details.
Well, if you look at their overall sales, things are looking pretty good.
Okay.
Sony's report shows that they've had some impressive growth,
Okay.
with sales topping 13 trillion yen.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's over 90 billion US dollars.
That's a lot of yen.
And a big chunk of that revenue, about 30%, comes from the Americas,
Oh.
showing just how important the US market is to Sony's global strategy.
Right, right. Those are some serious numbers. But It's not all about today's wins, right?
Right.
To really understand where a company's headed, we need to look at where they're like putting their money.
You gotta see the investments.
Right, exactly.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Sony has earmarked a massive 339.6 billion yen for capital expenditures this year.
Wow.
And the lion's share of that investment,
Yeah.
it's going straight into boosting their image sensor production capacity.
Okay, so they're really they're betting big on image sensors.
They are. They are.
What's the thinking there?
Well, remember what we said about image sensors being these tiny but powerful components in our smartphones
Right.
and cameras?
Right.
The demand for those is only going to increase as,
Of course, yeah.
as we crave even better photos and videos, even more cameras on our devices.
Right.
Sony seems to be anticipating this trend and positioning themselves to be like the dominant supplier, even as the technology kind of evolves.
So it's like they're playing a long game here.
Long game.
Thinking years ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
But even with the solid strategy, I mean, aren't there always challenges for a company this massive?
Sure.
Operating in such competitive industries?
Of course, yeah. There are always hurdles. And Sony's report is it's refreshingly candid about the risks they face.
Okay.
One of the biggest, perhaps unsurprisingly, is competition.
Right.
Think about the gaming world for a second, right?
Yeah.
Sony's PlayStation might be a household name, but they've got Microsoft's Xbox breathing down their necks.
Right.
Plus, you've got new players emerging all the time.
Right.
To stay on top, Sony needs to constantly innovate, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in gaming.
Right. It's like a constant arms race.
It is.
In the tech world, right.
It really is, yeah. And it's not just about outdoing the competition, right? It's about anticipating those disruptive technologies
Oh, absolutely.
that can shake up an entire industry.
Right.
Remember those global chip shortages
Oh.
that wreaked havoc not so long ago? Well,
Yeah.
Sony was hit by that too.
Right.
Highlighting how vulnerable even giants can be to supply chain disruptions.
Right.
They even had to, temporarily halt image sensor shipments to a major Chinese customer
Wow.
due to those U.S. export restrictions we talked about earlier.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
That's a stark reminder that even a global powerhouse like Sony is kind of subject to the whims of geopolitics
For sure.
and global events.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of, changing landscapes, we can't forget about the kind of the seismic shift in how people are consuming entertainment.
Right.
Streaming services
Yes.
have revolutionized how we watch listen to music.
Right.
Which directly impacts, two of Sony's core segments, pictures and music.
Okay, so they're facing pressure from competitors, supply chain vulnerabilities, and the ever-changing habits of consumers.
It's a lot.
Sounds like a lot to juggle.
It certainly is.
Right.
And then there's the ever-present threat of cybersecurity, which looms large for any company.
Right.
So reliant on technology and data, Sony has, unfortunately, been a target of cyber attacks in the past.
Right.
A risk they acknowledge in the report.
That's a sobering thought, for sure. It seems like every company, even one as powerful as Sony, is vulnerable on some level.
I think that's right.
But surely they're not just sitting back and letting these challenges wash over them. So they've got their work cut out for them. But knowing Sony, they're not just playing defense, right?
Right. They're not just sitting back. They are going on the offensive, making some really strategic moves here to solidify their position in, those key growth areas.
Okay.
And they're not afraid to be bold.
Okay.
For starters, they're doubling down on gaming, right? On their dominance in that space.
Okay.
That acquisition of Bungie,
Right.
the studio behind the Halo franchise, that was a major power play.
Right.
Signaling to the gaming world that they are serious about staying on top.
That deal caused quite a stir.
It did.
What else are they focusing on?
Well, they're also tapping into this, this global phenomenon that is anime.
Okay. Right.
Through their Aniplex subsidiary.
Right.
They are investing heavily in anime production and distribution.
Okay.
Which is a very smart move considering, anime's exploding popularity, especially with, younger audiences who are so incredibly engaged and influential these days.
It's fascinating how Sony always seems to have their finger on the pulse
They do.
of these emerging trends like the rise of anime.
Yeah.
It speaks to their ability to kind of adapt and evolve with the times.
For sure.
But what about some of the more unexpected moves in the report?
You must be talking about their foray into electric vehicles.
Yes.
Remember that Sony-Honda mobility joint venture we mentioned?
Right.
They're definitely testing the waters in the EV market,
Wow.
which, that could be huge if it takes off.
It's like they're saying, why just entertain you with movies and games when we can also build the car that you drive to the theater?
Right.
Or the gaming convention.
Exactly.
Right.
But here's the thing. While they're making these, big, bold moves into these new areas,
Right.
they're also making a pretty significant shift in their existing structure.
Okay.
The report outlines their plans to spin off their financial services group,
Right.
which, just some analysts scratching their heads.
That was a big piece of news that came out of this report.
It was.
Spin off such a, steady, profitable,
Right.
part of their business.
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
It suggests that Sony is really focusing on its identity as this company at the forefront of entertainment and technology.
Okay.
This move could give them, more flexibility to invest heavily in those areas, or even, make some surprising acquisitions in the future.
So it's almost like they're streamlining their focus.
Yeah.
And putting all of their energy behind becoming this ultimate entertainment and technology powerhouse.
Precisely.
Oh, wow.
And that's what makes, this annual report so intriguing. It's not just a collection of numbers and figures, right?
Right.
It's a glimpse into how Sony sees the future unfolding and their strategy for not just navigating that future, but shaping it,
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's been a fascinating deep dive into the world of Sony.
It has been.
We've seen the incredible breadth of their business,
It's really remarkable.
their impressive financial performance, the challenges they face,
Yeah.
and their bold plans for the future.
Yeah. And how they're tackling it all.
It's clear that Sony is a company in constant motion,
Always evolving.
adapting and evolving to stay ahead of the curve.
That's right.
Right.
And that's what makes them, such a fascinating case study, I think.
Absolutely.
This company with this rich history, yet they're not afraid to reinvent themselves.
Right.
This report is just a snapshot in time,
Sure.
but it gives us a lot to think about, regarding the future of entertainment,
Right.
technology, and the role that Sony will play in shaping that future.
Absolutely. We've unpacked a lot in this deep dive.
We did.
Key takeaways from Sony's 2024 annual report. But as we've seen, there are still a lot of questions about what the future holds for this iconic company.
Lots of questions, but it should be exciting to see what they do.
One thing's for sure, though, with their innovative spirit and their finger on the pulse of emerging trends, Sony will undoubtedly continue to surprise and entertain us for years to come.
I think that's a safe bet.
I think so, too.
Yeah.